fashion,
Mm-hmm.
you could have a real logjam.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing as what we're doing with our post-secondary schools. We really wanna promote our post-secondary schools, but what if we do too good a job? And they've got no place to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, but, and I don't know if it's, you know, a lot of people say, well, that's not the municipality's problem, it's the school's problem, and I say, well, it's an image problem too. And that's what I was saying, do we market our community to the students, because really, we want students to come here, get educated here, and then stay here.
Yeah.
But we can't even keep our own students here, because we can't find jobs for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that really, I think the city needs to look at, needs to say, you know, and again, I think if they work directly with the schools, you know, maybe even looking at, numbers of degrees that are being issued, you know, if, a lot of them are, you know, graduating with a certain degree, the city should perhaps look at that and say, well, you know what, we have, I don't know, 1,000 students coming out with this degree every year. That's something that should be addressed, and we should try and foster growth in that sector of the economy to cater to those students, because I mean
That's a good point. That's a really good point. That way we've got a target, and whoever comes here knows they've got, the recruiting is kind of taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, because that's, I think, the biggest issue is that, you know, the city is investing in certain sectors of the economy, and others are just kind of either stagnant or declining. So those areas, you know, need to work directly with the schools. I mean, I don't think you can argue that the schools need to be involved in politics to be able to get them, get the development that they need for their students.
That's a good point. Any other general issues that are kind of coming to the forefront, either in your mind or in the mind of the people in Ward 3?
I mean, one of the things that are, you know, a lot of people are discussing about the environment too.
Right.
I mean, Sudbury has, you know, over 500 lakes. There's a lot of lakes in my ward. A lot of people are saying, you know, the city's just not taking enough of an initiative to ensure those lakes are protected. Now, it is a federal jurisdiction to watch over, you know, on the lakes and stuff, but I think that, you know, the city can easily get involved.
Yeah, we drink the water.
Exactly. So
we should be involved, right?
So I think that they should be involved, and they should, you know, the next council term, councillors should be, every action that they take should be geared to protecting the environment, either with the lakes or any other of the natural environment has to be at the forefront of any policy that you've done. Because I mean, you simply can't disregard the environment anymore. I mean, time and time again, we hear reports of, you know, climate change, things like that. And then, I mean, the lakes, especially, like, for example, Ramsey Lake, they're just getting very contaminated, and that has to be addressed.
Good point. The issues of accountability, transparency, they are basically all the same that you're hearing all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who's going to be running will be saying the same thing. You know, we have to increase transparency, accountability. Obviously, I would like to see the Ontario Ombudsman return, and you know, a term for the Auditor General. But these are issues that I think almost every candidate is talking about.
Pretty hard to say you're against transparency and accountability and expect to get elected, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think that there should be a higher level of accountability. You know, I think it's nice to say, oh, well, you know, we want the Ontario Ombudsman's back, but I think, you know, councillors should perhaps they should act transparently, and that's why, you know, I'd like to bring in a councillor's code of conduct for councillors to make sure they're acting in a way that's accountable, it's transparent, and that the, you know, citizens' tax dollars are being respected as well. You know, when we see things like the Sudbury Transit, you know, millions of dollars just up and disappear. I think that's something that, definitely needs to be looked into, because I just don't think that should be allowed.
No, good point. It's like you say, how we get about to this accountability and transparency is one thing that we're gonna have to really take a good look at. Like I think back to the security fiasco, about the announcement of the increased security at council meetings where, the media was gonna be almost searched as they got in, they had to get it back. That was one of those things that I think the councillors got blindsided on because it was the way it was communicated that caused all the problem. It wasn't really as bad as it sounded, but the way it got out, it just made all of the councillors look terrible. So,
Yeah.
so I guess because obviously you're into education and you're into higher education, so you know the importance of education. And I think when you get into accountability and transparency, a lot of it has to be, how are we communicating with our constituents?
Mhm.
How are the councillors explaining to their constituents what's happening and why it's happening? And, this whole issue of being ignored, I can see all that, all the pieces just kind of, the thread just goes through on so many of these issues.
Yeah.
And it's so nice, I guess, that if you've got that mentality that, okay, we're gonna make a decision on council, now we have to go back to our constituents and make sure they understand why. Or we have to go back to our constituents and say, this is on the table at the council meeting. What are your feelings? And then the big problem is, how do you find out what the silent majority is thinking? Because the majority of people don't say anything to you. And you have to read what they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make sure that, citizens are heard, and you have to make sure they're represented on city council. But like you said, there is a challenge to get people involved, to get them to say, oh yeah, well, that's not really a great idea, or, well, I support that. And I mean, I think one of the things is making sure that councillors are able to be reached. Pick up the phone, call, message, and you get back to them. I'm hearing a lot of people saying, well, councillors, when we call them, they don't get back to us, or it's their secretary, or things like that. I mean, I've had a few people tell me that out in the ward. So I think that's something, I think councillors need to work directly with citizens, make sure that they're heard. And I think, if the more citizens get involved, the more, word of mouth gets around. Hey, so-and-so came down and saw us today, what do you think of this? And then, even though they don't perhaps necessarily participate directly, I think, word will get around, and then that person can actually, speak up and say, well.
And they know they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So if they don't take it, that's their choice, but at least they have to have the opportunity. Very interesting. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Is there anything we've missed that you want to make sure we capture in this interview? I think we've talked about a lot of the issues locally and some of the larger ones that encompass the whole city. We've got your background. I mean, you're right out of the post-secondary environment. You're in that group that wants to get into a career in the Sudbury area, and you got some ideas on how to work with the schools. So maybe, and I love this strategy that you brought up about taking a look at the most popular programs and trying to focus on businesses that could use those graduates, because recruiting is a huge problem for companies. So, I mean, if we're producing the talent that they need, half the battle is over for these companies. Anything you can think of that?
I mean, one of the big things, basically I'm just trying to bring change to the municipal government. Often people say, well, you're a young girl, what can you, possibly bring to city council? But one of the things I think is focusing more on the long term rather than the short term. Especially because of my age, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, living in the community for, you know, 40, 50 years to come. So I can definitely think of that, you know, long-term perspective, and apply it to certain policies. So I think, you know, there definitely needs to be, you know, a fine-tuned focus on not just, you know, this term of city council or the next, but, you know, 20 or 30 years down the road, how are these policies going to impact the community? So I think that's definitely something that I hope to bring to politics, and hope to bring, you know, a new generation of politics, and then, you know, just bring some new ideas to city council.
That's a good way of summing it up. Jesse Gaudet, you're running for the position of councillor in Ward 3. Ward 3 includes that Chelmsford, Onabing, Dowling,
And the back.
and Levac area. Wish you the best of luck. I want to thank you for coming in to the Learning Clinic. This interview will be posted on the Learning Clinic so that you can link to it. It's going to be a YouTube video, so hopefully you can use it on your website. And 9 weeks away.
Yeah.
9 weeks and it's all over. So good luck with the rest of your courses. I know you've got about a month left.
Mhm.
Be nice to get those out of the way. And good luck with the campaign.
Thank you very much.
And you've been listening to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I am your host, Bob Kerwin, and we will be back in about 15 minutes with Jeff Huska, who is running for the position of mayor with the city of Pearson.